I really enjoyed my trip to the Dardenup Heritage Park, located a quick drive outside of Bunbury, south of Perth, Western Australia. I'll introduce Jill Brookes, who owns and operates the park today.
Because Gary and I had already chosen the date to open the park, when he died suddenly, 8 weeks before the date we'd chosen, we decided the best thing we could possibly do would be to open the park on the day that he had chosen. For everything we have here at the park operates, that's part of the conditions. We actually get everything up and running, so there's not a dozer in the shed that doesn't run, or a tractor, and that's what stands us apart. Well, it was never ever allowed to be called a museum. Gary loved nothing more than going out and demonstrating his machines. He would take the machines, load them up, take them out to field days and demonstrate them all day, and that gave him the greatest of pleasure. His first love was always dozers. When we got our first, this is his very first dozer, it's a TD35, he went on to restore and collect 35 more dozers. He had a wonderful knowledge of all of the machinery, and it would have been a sin if he hadn't done something with it. He, as I say, was a very hard-working man, and he seemed to draw people to him. There was lots of people that had the same common interest, and he had an excellent way of getting the best out of people, and we ended up having a wonderful...
My interest in sawmills aroused my visit to Dardenup Heritage Park, led me to Wellington Mills, a short car drive outside Dardanup in the Ferguson Valley. It's mainly rolling farm fields today with vineyards. Not a lot to see, but it was the site of an immense KARRI forest and 2 thriving sawmills with a community of over 100 buildings. Imagine what heritage has been left by the sawmill industry. Perhaps there's old sawmills, locomotives, abandoned bush railway lines, and the debris of long-term logging. Imagine exploring old sawmills and finding abandoned tractor engines lying rotting and rusting in the forest. Alas, these things are not to be at Wellington Mills. There's little left but a plaque and a large KARRI trunk. But let's have a look at the industry that flourished there, the logging industry, between the 1880s and the closing of the last sawmill in 1928. A vast network of bush railway lines were laid through the KARRI forest, and a spur line was built to Dardanup, where it connected with Perth and Bunbury. Logs were hauled by bullock teams and later by horses to the railway lines. By the early 1900s, steam winches were used to drag the logs out of the forest. Because of the weight of the logs, winds were used, which lifted the logs off the ground. Of course, both the trains, tractor engines, and sawmills were powered by steam engines, fired with burning logs. Wood, after all, was free. In the late 1800s and early 1900s, there was a large number of sawmill companies, and probably 10 or 12 sawmills in the Wellington Mill area, but these were consolidated into one large company called Millers. In 1904, they opened a very large sawmill at Wellington Mills with the determination to cut all the JARRA, and this was completed by 1919 when the sawmill was closed. A smaller one operated for another decade. All the buildings in the sawmill town were constructed of sawn timber and pretty crudely constructed in places. Initially, a small portable sawmill would be placed in order to build the larger structure, and these portable sawmills were often moved about through the bush. I do wonder about safety standards. Large rotating saw blades with no protection, driven by massively long leather straps with no protection. One slip and one would be seriously maimed. There is one death recorded at Wellington Mills by someone caught up in a drive strap. In today's sawmills, there is very little contact between the operators and the logs. Everything is handled remotely by machinery. It's hard to believe today that this town contained over 100 houses, maybe a population somewhere between 500 or 1,000 people. There were at one time 120 school children attending the primary school. There seem to be all kinds of buildings: butchers, bakers, news agents, general store, 2 churches, and lots of social clubs for almost everything. After 1928, the population declined drastically, less than 10 school children. The place was inhabited mainly by farmers, many with dairy farming, and today vineyards are taking precedent. In 1950, a large bushfire destroyed almost the entire town, leaving only 3 buildings: the manager's house, the post office, and the school. All else was burned to the ground. In 1971, the public school closed, followed in 1972 by the post office. However, there are occasional reunions of the old residents of Wellington Mills, and these people remember fondly their early years in this booming logging sawmill town. Thanks, visitor, for joining me on this quick tour of Dardanup Heritage Park and the sawmill town of Wellington Mills.